Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Burak, and I'm from Carnegie Mellon University. My colleague, Kenji Shimada, and I have been pondering the link between concepts of products and the real final products that come about. And we would like to share some of our thoughts, some of our questions with you today. So it helps to look at the design process on a two-dimensional space covered by the conceptual freedom that we have versus the engineering rigor, the depth that we will cover in this process. So in many situations, especially in product design, we see scenarios in which the idea starts on paper with very rough drawings, sketches, and so forth, and then perhaps we move on to stylistic renderings, digital renderings on computers, 2D renderings, and then from this information, perhaps we go into clay modeling, laser scanning, surfacing, detailed modeling, and then we go into analysis, simulations, and so forth, and to finally manufacturing and the final product. This kind of trend is pretty common in many situations, and one common observation is that we see a very rapid decrease in the conceptual freedom as we move in the design process. So in favor of carrying out all the engineering simulations, analysis, decision making, we see that we sacrifice our conceptual freedom. So this is a problem, we think, and the common wisdom actually follows a similar convention in which it separates the design process into this early conceptual phases of ideation, where the common themes are sketching, low fidelity exploration, and creativity, versus the detailed design stage where we now are doing conflict resolution, refinement, negotiation between engineers and stylists, and so forth. And unfortunately, today's CAD software is mostly useful in this detailed stage, stages of the design process. So what we're looking for is to perhaps expand the utility of the CAD software in different ways. And one way to think about this problem is that no matter what path you take, there's a starting point of some simple empty canvas to the end point of the final product. So perhaps we don't have to take this path. So what we're asking is, what would the design process, the design tools, and finally our world would look like if we had taken a different path, an alternative path that might look like this. So if you now start thinking about this problem, you will recognize that this is a pretty bold proposition because it assumes that you have all the decision-making tools, engineering analysis tools that can work at any level of the conceptual freedom axis. So imagine that you're working on a very rough, very informal part of the design. You don't have your idea set yet you're asking for a deep analysis of your thoughts. So we recognize that this is a challenge, but something that we would like to undertake. So we don't have the answers here, so we're only posing this as a challenge, as a question, but we have a few insights. So we think that in order to achieve this kind of functionality, we might have to have very strong human-centric user interfaces. So we have to think outside our common notions of perhaps the keyboard, mouse, and things like that, and go really understand how humans interact with each other and within themselves, and try to observe those processes. Secondly, we might have to do a lot of research in what we call approximate or fuzzy engineering, which means the ability to engineer, to solve, to analyze, simulate in the presence of informal, incomplete, and rough data. So how do we do that? What are the tools today that can do that? Imagine meshing a sketch and getting something meaningful. And finally, what is the notion of guided creativity we think is important, which means the designer should be exposed to certain engineering constraints up front so that the creativity is done in a guided fashion where we're always in the useful and feasible parts of the design space. So, as we said, we don't have all the answers, but we're only approaching this from, a very small, perhaps, angle, and would like to show some of our work to date. So here we're showing perhaps the common conventional design process in which you can do all your sketching on paper, import that to a CAD software, have it all on your orthographic views, and start modeling. So at this time, there's really no creativity because you're trying to merely replicate what you have already created on paper. So a lot of your effort is going into fine-tuning the curves, the curvature, in order to match the sketches that you have drawn on paper. And these sketches don't have to really match well from this different perspective, so you're going to have a hard time really negotiating the final shape in this interface. So we see the challenges here. So instead, we're proposing the use of these purely sketch-based 3D modeling interfaces where someone can quickly sketch an idea, and that idea takes shape in 3D directly. So imagine that you drew a part like this. You can quickly surface it with soft surfaces and then start modifying, playing with it. So now this is an environment where you can also think and negotiate the different aspects in real time rather than having to do this in a decoupled fashion. And as we see, the key challenges here is obviously to convert two-dimensional information that's coming from your tablet into 3D and playing with that in a satisfactory way to the human eye. And not only this, but now we can, with the presence of such a system, we can bring in engineering constraints such as layouts that are available to us and other constraints that need to be managed into the design environment where creative stages can occur in the presence of such constraints. And the user will have a better way, we think, in negotiating these constraints. And so finally, so this is what perhaps we want you to maybe think about, maybe an alternate path from the concept to the final product through some non-conventional way. And we are able to actually perhaps start exciting a few industries, and some of this research has been funded by the Honda R&D, and using these, this idea, we are looking into different ways of perhaps creating products that can satisfy form and function concurrently during the conception phase. Thank you very much.